I've taken you around quite a few cemeteries and churchyards in Aberdeenshire, and I've shown you the security measure that these communities would take to protect their loved ones from being dug up and body snatched. And when you think about the different examples and different types, it's all really a progression from one to the next. You know, when body snatching started to become a thing, so what did the communities do to protect the churchyards and the cemeteries? Well, they would put a big gate on the cemetery with a substantial lock, and then they would also build the walls to the cemetery higher, just to stop people from climbing over. So that wouldn't always work. So then you would build watch houses in the cemetery to keep guard. The Mort slab itself, so the Mort slab, big piece of either granite or stone that was laid on top of the freshly dug grave to protect it. Well, that was fine because it would stop people from digging down, but you could dig in from the sides. And the Aberdeenshire Mort safe is a progression of that. You know, you've got the granite slab on top with iron lattice underneath. But that wasn't always secure, because if you were really determined to get at the coffin, then you could dig underneath. And there's an example from Aberlour back in 1915 in St Dunstan's old churchyard. A Mort safe was unearthed, and inside the Mort safe was a completely intact and undamaged coffin. But when they opened the coffin was mysteriously empty. So Mort safes wasn't always secure, you know. And then you've got my favourite, the Mort house, where coffins would be stored for up to 6 weeks before they were reinterred in the cemetery. But again, Mort safes wasn't always secure, as there are examples of ones that have been broken into. And it's all a progression from one to the next. And as I mentioned before, when the Anatomy Act came in 1832, it did practically end body snatching overnight. But communities would still be nervous. The watch house and Mort house that I've shown you in Marnock Cemetery, that was built in 1832. There's a cracking Mort house in Unley Green that was also built in 1832. So it shows you that the communities would still be nervous, and they were nervous because of the money that would be involved. Cheers. This is Coull Churchyard, and we have a nice little Mort house here. Cemeteries like this, they're quite isolated, but they're still close enough to Aberdeen, so they were targeted quite regularly by body snatchers. The Mort house is a typical Mort house for a cemetery this size. The walls are about 2 feet thick. It's built into the ground. It's a vaulted ceiling, a stone vaulted ceiling with a turfed roof. The door would have been a really thick, heavy door with a really substantial lock in it. And these are the sort of measures that were taken. The current door is a replacement, and it is open, so we're going to go in and have a look. Nice little Mort house, has a vaulted ceiling, which was typical. Currently being used for storage. We'll have all the boards and that for the cemetery. There's also broken grave slabs in here as well. But this is typical of a Mort house for a cemetery this size. Coffins would be stored in here probably for a period of up to 6 weeks. Not the original door. Door's been replaced. The door would have been a lot thicker and stronger with a lot more security on it than here. But nevertheless, Nice little Mort house. This is Towie Churchyard, and there's a nice Aberdeenshire Mort safe line just in the cemetery, just behind me. It is a good example. It's currently lying upside down. Reminds me a bit of an upside down turtle, but it lets you see the iron lattice framework. This is Belhelvie Old Churchyard. In churchyards like this, because they were close to Aberdeen but also quite secluded, they'd have been an easy target. And I'm guessing it was the case here, because it's unusual in the fact that on the site there are two Mort houses. The first one is behind me. It's of later construction, made out of granite. It still has the original wooden door. The door is locked, I'm afraid, so we can't get extra access, but it's a good example of a later variant of a Mort house. And the second Mort house on this site is this mound here. It was probably part of an earlier church before that was demolished. It's really narrow inside, it's really tight, so I'm not going to crawl in. It is of stone construction, it's a vaulted ceiling, and it's just been turfed over. There's probably space for a couple of coffins at best. But yes, second Mort house. This is Dyce Old Churchyard. It's a really nice watch house here in sight. It's well maintained, windows are blocked up and the door's locked so we can't get access, but it's a really good example of what watch houses were. A small building, generally tucked away in the corner of a cemetery. That way, from this position, you can look out your windows and keep an eye out over the cemetery. And what I like about this one is you'll see this in many watch houses, is this nice little hole we have here. Now if you're not sure, that is a gun loop, so that way if you're keeping watch and there's people moving, you can take pot shots at them without having to leave a watch house. It's a really nice example. Behind me is Hatton of Fintray Mort house. It's an semi-underground Mort house. Made stone construction, vaulted ceiling and then turfed over. It was built in 1830. The door is just down here, down there. Now, it was an iron door. It doesn't look like the door's there anymore, so it looks like there is access, but as you can see it's really overgrown. It looks like it's wild roses, so I am not going down there to have a look. Not without a strimmer. Anyway, but I've taken you to this one because there's a strange story associated with this Mort houses. And Mort houses weren't always secure. And this one, not long after it was constructed, it was broken into and the body of our local farmer was stolen. And the strange part about it is his corpse was found abandoned by the side of the road not long after, but it was missing its head. So what those grave robbers did with his head, nobody ever found out. But it just goes to show you that sometimes not all these measures were secure enough. Cheers. enjoyed my journey around the local churchyards and cemeteries and showing you the remnants of what can be found that go back to the body snatching era. And I've been trying to figure out the best place to end in this journey, and I think I found it. This is Trinity Cemetery in Aberdeen. On the east side in the cemetery and up in the hill there's quite a large memorial. I think it was built in the 60s, although I'm not sure. However, on the memorial there's a nice inscription, and the inscription reads, "In memory of those who gave their bodies for the increase of knowledge and the advance of medicine." Now, I don't know who conceived the idea, but I like to think that whoever conceived the idea for this memorial, that in there is a nod to those who didn't willingly give their bodies for the increased knowledge and the advance of medicine, but instead were body snatched. Because even though the idea of body snatching is quite grim, ultimately it was done for the increase in knowledge, and it was done for medical science. So hopefully within this memorial there's a nod to those that were taken. Cheers.